Hey, Kat. So I am bringing budgeting to you. It seems to be really hard to set up a FaceTime call with you because you're super busy. That's totally okay. I'm super proud of you. But I'm posting these on YouTube so that you can speed it up, slow it down, stop it where you need to, and take some notes. Um, the first thing you might notice is that I'm on the desktop version of EveryDollar. There's a reason for that. I originally wanted this to be on our phones because if you're anything like me, I'm hardly on my desktop anymore. But it turns out you can't edit certain categories of EveryDollar without being on the desktop version. So for example, if you wanted to rename this given category or delete the group altogether, you can't do that on the phone, which is a little interesting to me, but here we are. So this is the default budget of EveryDollar. It's totally okay. It's all right. It's not my favorite. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First, if you scroll down, you'll notice pretty quickly that this is set up for not a single person, and especially not a single person in your stage of life. Things like pet care, child care, that's just not you. But you can easily delete those. The second thing I'd mention is when you're single, I feel like more things belong in your personal category than they would if you're married. For example, your entertainment and your restaurant categories, I would put those in your personal category because you're single. You eating out is not a necessity, especially not a necessity if you're getting out of debt. But more than that, this having a food category for just groceries and restaurants, I would set this up differently. So what we're going to do is set up a budget how I would set up a budget if I were you in your season of life if I'm single. And so the first thing that we need to do before we do that is delete all these categories. So we can go here, we can delete this group, and slowly but surely start with a fresh budget without anything on there. And it's okay, we'll add all this back here in a second. And starting with a fresh, clean slate will make our life a little bit easier. So if you notice, I actually couldn't delete the debt category. That's kind of funny to me because eventually, if you're following Dave's principles, you won't have any more debt. And so eventually this category will just sit here blank, loud, proud, and free. So we have a blank budget now. And so what we can do is add a group. And so we can add this group. We can call it personal, and we can add items to it. So I'm going to go ahead and fill out this budget, and then we'll come back to it once I have every category made. All right, so welcome back, Kat. So as you can see, I've set up your July budget here, as it says in the top. And so the first thing we have to do before we start anything is your income. So how much do you think you're going to make? I understand that you might not have 100% idea how much you're going to make based off of when you actually receive the check. There might be a couple dollars off here and there, or maybe a few $100s more than you thought you were going to make. Hopefully that's the case. But let's just use an example of $800 for these two paychecks. And then let's say, I don't know, $600 for your third. Maybe you have a second job and it's a little bit less. So either way, this is what you think you plan on making. And then when you actually receive that money, you'll add a transaction and it'll go into your receive column and you'll adjust it from there. So for example, once you receive the money, let's say you actually earn $798.23. We'll make this an income and not an expense. Let's say paycheck 1. Add new income. And so when we go to paycheck 1, we'll add it in there. And you need to adjust your planned income to $798.23. So once you actually receive the check and the cents are off, you need to go back through and make sure that you change that so that when you actually do your budget, it works out at the end. So let's talk about the budget that I've set up for you. So the first thing first is your personal category. Now before we start going through each of the line items in your budget, you're going to need to go through and make all of these piggy bank categories. And what does that mean? Well, when you actually click on the category, you'll see this button on the right here that says make this a fund. So click on that, press make this a fund, bada bing, bada boom, you're done. The reason I do that for every single category in my budget, no matter what it is, I will make it a fund category. Because if you don't, let's say, for example, you plan $100 for your treat yourself category, and let's say you don't spend all 100 of it. Let's say you only spend 80. You'll have $20 remaining. But the problem is, if you don't make this a piggy bank category and you go into August, it's going to delete the money. So instead of having $20 plus $100, which you should have, it's going to say you only have 100 left. So I go through and make everything a fund category, because if I don't, your money's going to quote unquote disappear at the end of the month. But that's not the case that's actually happening. When you go to your bank account, your money obviously doesn't disappear month to month. So I'm going to go through each of your categories and explain my heart behind why I do budgeting this way. So in your personal category, Dave has that as well. This is your treat yourself category. This is the money that you plan to spend month to month on whatever you want. And this can literally be anything. This can be stuff off of Amazon. This can be coffee at a coffee shop. This can be sky's the limit. It's your money to spend on a month to month basis. The next is your clothing category. It's a pretty obvious category. It speaks for itself. The next category that I had and I found super helpful is personal savings. Now, this category I use for things that, well, I'm a spender. So if I put everything in my treat yourself category, I'm going to spend all $100 every single month without fail. Because I see the money, I spend the money. So my personal savings category was a way for me to save money for when friends said, hey, we're going to go cliff jumping. It costs, money for gas, money for permits. You got to pay for that. Well, odds are, if it's the end of the month, Andrew didn't have any money in his treat yourself category. So I had to add a category called personal savings. Really helpful. Eating out is another category. This is not a category that you technically have to have. Eating out can fall under your treat yourself category. But if you're really struggling with eating out and you're spending a lot of money on eating out, I recommend separating it so that you're not spending all your money on eating out in the first 15 days of the month, and then you don't have any month left over for anything else that you wanted to spend on. Again, coffee is another great example of it doesn't have to even be coffee. Think of something that you spend a lot of money on that you need to limit. For me, that was coffee. Another example might be, I'm trying to think. Well, I can't think of one, sorry. But this is just kind of like a budgeting example where the more categories you have, the more inflexible your budget will be, because you have so many categories and it's super annoying and you don't want too many. But if you have too few, like you only have one item in your personal category called treat yourself, well, odds are you're going to get frustrated because you don't know how much money you actually have, because you know that you have to spend money later on in the month, but you just keep spending the money. So we don't want to do that. Subscriptions, if you have subscriptions to anything, now that I'm married, I don't have this in my personal category because it doesn't make any sense, but as a single person I did. You can move this wherever you want. It really doesn't have to live here. But let's say, for example, you have subscription to Hulu. I would call that a personal expense because you really don't have to have Hulu. Now let's move on to the next category that I called home. I have two categories for grocery. I have grocery food and I have grocery home. Well, what does that mean? Grocery food is what you think of when you go to buy food. This is your chicken. This is your rice. This is everything you need to make a meal. This is even snacks at the grocery store. This is everything that you eat that isn't eating out. What the grocery home category is, the grocery home category is separated so that you're not spending all of your food money on razors, on laundry detergent, on any of those staples that you need in your apartment or home to make life work. The reason I separate the two is because we all know that there's those months where you don't spend anything on toilet paper, anything on laundry detergent, but then we all have that 1 month where you need more razors, you need laundry detergent, you need toilet paper, and you're out of dish soap, and you need to replace the scrubby brush that goes in your sink. So all of a sudden, this so-called grocery home category would eat all of your grocery food category. So by separating these two, these have really helped me kind of make sure that I know that if I'm overspending on the grocery food category, it's because I'm overspending on food. It's not because I bought too much Tide laundry detergent. Gas, it makes sense. Gas is gas. But what I do recommend is this should be gas for your everyday life plus some normal weekend excursions. It shouldn't be, don't be too stingy, but don't be too generous either. I don't consider this gas category for when I go on trips. If you're going on a long weekend trip to, I don't know, let's just say anywhere, like more than an hour away, I would put that in your trip category, which you'll see later down the road. And so that kind of, the reason I do that is because if Savannah and I were to go, let's say to San Diego, it's an 8-hour car drive, that would destroy our gas category and we'd be a little frustrated. So we end up putting that gas money in the trip category, and this gas money is for us getting around here in Phoenix, and then plus some weekend trips. It includes like going up to Flagstaff, which is 2 hours away. Haircut is haircut. Miscellaneous. Now this isn't a miscellaneous category for your home budget. This is a miscellaneous category for your entire budget. You might think this is a bad place for this category to be, and if you do, that's 100% okay. Like I said, these budgets are like ice cream flavors. It really depends on what you like and what makes sense for going on in your life. But I keep it here. And don't be too stingy on the miscellaneous category. This is something that Savannah and I struggle with. We always, when we have too much month and not enough money, we end up kind of skimping out on the miscellaneous category. And it really hurts us at the end. Having a decent amount of money in your miscellaneous category helps your budget breathe, and honestly will keep you budgeting month after month. If you don't put any money in here, or really if you're putting anywhere between $0 and $40, I don't think that's enough. I think it needs to be more than that, because this is where a lot of flexibility lies in your budget. All right, let's move to the next category, adulting. That's what I call it because it makes sense to me in my head. And after all, it is my budget. So rent, utilities, you can split up your utilities if you want. You can have them in one category if you want. It's all okay to me. Cell phone plans, investing, if you are investing. If you're not, that's okay. Insurance, this would be auto insurance. This would be life insurance. Any kind of insurance that you have would go in this category. I put it all under adulting because, well, that's what it is. And then our second to last category, giving. So if you tithe, this is obviously where you'd put it. But no matter what you do, I recommend to everybody, even if I know they're not a Christian, I recommend they have a generosity fund. I think this is the make or break category for your budget. And I'm going to stop here for a second and explain that. When you go out to eat with a friend and you had a waiter who was amazing and you want to give them a super generous tip, well, where's it going to come from? Is it going to come from your personal restaurant category? It could, but I mean, if you're going to give them above and beyond what you'd normally give, you're going to start feeling a little stingy if it's coming out of your own personal money. Because over time, as you do budgeting month after month after month, you're going to start tying a lot of emotion to these categories. And so if you do see a homeless guy on the side of the road and you do want to give him any kind of money at all, or you want to go buy him lunch, if you're taking that out of your personal category, there's nothing wrong with that. But what I recommend doing instead is having a generosity category. So if you give someone like a 50% tip, have that extra 30% of your tip go into the generosity category. If your friend you feel like is having a hard week and you want to buy them a coffee, put it in the generosity category. Anything like that at all, put it in the generosity category, even if you're not planning any money for it right now. Because what it will do is give you the emotional freedom to go ahead and give freely without feeling like, oh crap, it's the end of the month. I don't have any money left in my own personal food category, so where would this come from? This generosity category solves all of that. I'll move on. Savings. So I have savings a little different. So this is about what I have. I have an emergency fund, I have car maintenance, vacation. So this would be like when I talked about those long road trips and you got to put gas in there, this is where it would go. A new car if you're saving for one. Christmas, because it always sneaks up on us every year, even though it's every 12 months. Home upgrades, if you want to have a category for that. I'm married now, so I basically am required to have a category for that. So my emergency fund actually isn't with my bank. It's actually with a separate bank. So while I have this category in my EveryDollar budget, it's with a different bank. So it doesn't make sense for me to have it in my budget. I do anyways, and I just kind of keep in the back of my head that it's not actually in my typical bank account. But for you, what this might look like is this might be, and I recommend at least your emergency fund be a different savings account within your bank. But all these car maintenance, vacation, new cars, Christmas, and home upgrades, this can be one big savings account. This doesn't have to be separate savings accounts, nor do I think they should be. So what you'll do is as you save money towards car maintenance, vacation, Christmas, as these remaining categories get bigger and bigger, that will be what's in the savings account. So for example, if you have $1,000 in car maintenance, $500 in vacation, and $500 in Christmas, that savings account will equal $2,000. Okay, so that's how I do my budgets, girl. I hope this helps at least get you started, and I can make more videos on how to do some of these details of like tracking transactions. What would it be like to link your bank accounts? Why do I think it's maybe not a good idea to link your bank account in the very beginning? And I can talk about why later. And then even some funny tricks that I've learned, like if you have a gift card from, let's say, Amazon, but you don't really want an Amazon gift card, or maybe a better example would be like mom gave you a Walmart gift card and what you really want to buy isn't at Walmart. I can show you how to quote unquote move that money around in EveryDollar so that you can actually spend that money on something that you'd want to. But I hope this helps get you started, girl. I would love your feedback. Let me know. I love you.